Hello and welcome. If you have ever watched This Hour Has 22 Minutes, a show that I personally loved and used to watch when we had cable eons ago, you will definitely know Rick Mercer, one of the originals on the show, and you probably know Mark Critch if you've been watching the show for a number of years. You will also recognize Mark Critch. He has been on the show for quite some time. In fact, he began on the show not long after Rick Mercer had left to begin his own program a while later. I found both of their stories when I went to Indigo recently. I've enjoyed watching both of these actors, comedians over the years, whether it was This Hour Has 22 Minutes or Rick Mercer's show, The Mercer Report. Both amazing individuals. Thank you so much for the laughs over the years. Definitely remember the rants that Rick Mercer used to do on his show. Always amazing as he was walking up and down these incredible areas, never skipped a beat. Of course, there may have been some editing, but still, the points that he made were amazing. If you've watched the show, you also know that it's political satire and comedy. It's usually pretty tasteful, and there are a lot of fun characters from over the years. I also remember Kathy Jones, who was also an original, and her Enid character, as well as others. Mary Walsh, of course, jumping in with the politicians in her Xena warrior princess type outfit, and just so many wonderful individuals. Thankfully, This Hour Is 22 Minutes is also available on YouTube, so if you haven't checked it out, be sure to look that up. I have yet to finish Rick Mercer's Talking to Canadians, his story about his life, his career. Very much looking forward to that read, so it will be a while before I do a longer comment about him. I did, however, finish Mark Critch's story, An Embarrassment of Critches. Highly recommend this read. The book was published in 2021. Mark talks about his teenage years, his life, how he got into show business, starting on This Hour Has 22 Minutes after Rick Mercer had left, but he didn't get the job that he originally applied for. He started as a writer on the show, a role that I believe he continues to be involved in, even though he's moved to in front of the camera long ago. It was a very enjoyable read. He talks about his beginnings in a small town in the East Coast. I very much admire both Mark and Rick, who, unlike so many others, continued to stay in Canada. And of course, it meant they didn't get those big fancy checks like the others who have gone to the United States, but they are certainly famous, much appreciated, much valued, and have given us so many laughs over the decades. The other nice thing about reading Mark's book is being able to see that other side to politicians, because Mark took on the position of interviewing the politicians, well, okay, more like surprising them, as did Mary Walsh before him. Interesting to see another side to the politicians that, of course, we don't get ever in the public media or other types of media. I enjoyed learning about Jean Chrétien, Justin Trudeau, and others. Mark shares a story about a friend of his who ended up having PTSD because of a situation Reading about that just validated my thoughts and impressions of Stephen Harper being a massive jerk. So that was enlightening. Also, a section of this, which was an immensely difficult read, was about the seal hunt. And of course, Mark shares a very different viewpoint, being from the community. Mark shares a number of important facts. He happened to find out that yet two more celebrities were there for photo ops, which, let's be serious, that's what most of these individuals do when it comes to jumping on board with various events. And I want to share a little bit about this because when two of these celebrities, one of them being Pamela Anderson, yes, another Canadian, showed up, it clearly demonstrates that when people hop on board with something, they don't necessarily do the research and understand what they're hopping on board with. So in this case, they had come and offered $1 million to the people of this area to stop the seal hunt. Now that sounds like a big chunk of money until you factor in, as Mark points out here, that works out to $165 per individual. This is a very difficult issue because, yes, it is hard to imagine the seal hunt. Of course, there were TV cameras around because these individuals were there with their big, massive check. Mark worked his way through the crowd. Of course, he was used to ambushing different politicians. He had his checkbook with him. He, of course, talks to Pamela Anderson after she's made this thing about, the videos and how it needs to stop. His statement was, "We've all seen the cruel videos," I said. "Barbara Wire, Baywatch Nights, Barbarella." "Stripperella," Anderson corrected me. In the heat of the moment, I had inadvertently referenced Jane Fonda's sci-fi film instead of Anderson's animated film about a crime-fighting stripper. "Stripperella, sorry, thank you," I apologized. "They make me embarrassed to be a Canadian." I turned to Pamela. "I'll make you the same offer. I'll give you $1 million to stop acting." The PETA VP was getting nervous, trying to laugh me off while he motioned for the police officers to swoop in and remove this interloper who was stealing his publicity stunt with a better thought out publicity stunt. The cops didn't move. "Is that check real?" Anderson asked me, and I assured her it was, before reminding her of her own math. "I'll give you the same offer you made the sealers," I continued, while the sealers cheered and the cameras clicked. "There are so many members of the Sealers Association, it breaks down to $165 a person. Will you give up your livelihood for $165? I don't really know what she thought of that. Her eyes were hidden behind her dark seal-like sunglasses, and I'm pretty sure her ability to express surprise had left several Botox sessions ago. But I knew I had made my point, and I knew what the clip on the evening news would be now. "Aren't you going to say anything to him?" the frustrated PETA VP shouted to two cops who were shivering close by. "Yes, I am," one of the cops said as he walked towards me, removing a glove. "I'm going to say I'd like to shake your hand." He stretched out his hand, and I shook it just long enough so that our hands didn't freeze together, and then I gave Mr. PETA the standard Newfoundland nod and a wink. "Welcome to Newfoundland," I said, and walked off. Now, I know that may be difficult for some people to hear, but again, there is so much more to these issues that don't get covered in the media. And these stars, whatever you want to call them, just showing up to, they say, bring attention, blah, 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 but there's no follow through on the issue. Unlike Mark Critch, who lives in the area, knows the people, knows the entire issue and situation. I highly recommend reading An Embarrassment of Critch's. There are just so many wonderful moments, laugh out loud, giggles. There are serious parts. It's a pleasure to find out how Mark got to doing the show, the hard work, the effort, as well as the other individuals that he met along the way. Some of them competing for that position on This Hour Has 22 Minutes. So, reading about how all of that played out, and of course, learning a bit more about Newfoundland and Labrador, which I very much appreciated. Let me know if you have read either Mark Critch's story or Rick Mercer's. I'm very much looking forward to the read about Rick Mercer because, as I say, these two individuals, I had so many laugh out loud moments from their shows. Rick Mercer, by the way, is also from the East Coast. I believe Newfoundland and Labrador. I'll know better once I start reading his book. Remember, if you've enjoyed this video, be sure to hit that like button. Leave a comment down below, either an emoji or a few words, as that definitely helps the channel get out to more individuals. And until next time, be safe, be well, remember to laugh, and great big hugs.